Hi, my name is John McAllister, and I am the host of the Setting Trick podcast. I'm excited to share with you our first ever Best of the Setting Trick. We completed this episode just as the outrage over George Floyd's death was coming to the surface. As an American, I am frustrated by the continued violence towards our Black communities. Where I once thought it was ridiculous for me to say that Black Lives Matter, I realize that my own passivity and lack of action is an implied acceptance of the status quo. I was recently having dinner on a local restaurant's patio when I saw a young Black man walking down the street. Without thinking, I profiled him as being dangerous and bad. As much as I want to blame external forces for our current condition, I've been schooled to look within. Was it really true that this young man was a threat to me? As much as I want you to enjoy this celebration of our podcast, I also encourage you to look inside yourself and see the ways in which each of us is creating our current reality. After that introduction, I don't know if I can still say that this best of is a showcase of our guests and their stories. I do still hope that bridge lovers will be able to share this episode with their non-bridge playing friends. One of the things that when we were recording Double Dummy, and one of the things that I love about that movie is like, I don't think non-bridge players really appreciate the intensity that bridge players have about like wanting to make the right play, wanting to get the right result, and like how much we care. Like this bridge. I've played lots of sports. My life growing up, I wanted to be a professional athlete, and I think what I want to get, one of the things I want to get across to the non-bridge playing public is like that this is serious. This is intense. Like we are going hard at it. And like when you get a bad result, you make a bad play, like it stings. And when you make a good play, it's sweet. To start out, let's listen to Gavin Wolpert talking about making a great play at the World Championships.
You know, it's funny. I'm not. I wouldn't characterize myself as a dynamic. You know, I'm not making amazing plays on any given hand. I mean, every so often I'll on defense do something that's tricky. You know, like I'll just like I'll when I see tricky, I don't mean like reckless. I just every so often, if you can catch the hand before, like if you can figure out the hand before declarer knows you figured out the hand, you can do very creative things to disguise the situation for declarer.
Right.
And I, you know, every so often I'll do something that I would never have seen or expected when I picked up the hand or as the play was going, but then I'll see it in tempo because I'm staying with the hand. and I can remember like it's funny how a few hands stick out. Like when I'm thinking of amazing hands, like there was a hand I defended with Vince in the World Championships in 2003 that it was some part score. It was like where a trick one, Vince led a card and dummy came with in a side. So it was like, let's call it 3 diamonds was the contractor. And Vince led a spade and dummy came with ace, queen, jack fifth. And I had king and 1 offside. And it was something like that where I was able to duck at trick 1.
Oh, wow.
But like declarer played really fast at trick 1, but I was ready. Like I was ready for it. And that one little play was like made like declarer then went to draw trumps, thinking that their side suit was going to just be set up, and because they drew trumps, we now had 7 winners on the outside. It was like the difference. Where if I won the card, they were going to make an over trick. But if I ducked it, when I ducked it, they now felt safe drawing trumps, opening themselves up in the side suits and going 3 down. So it was like a 4 trick swing. And yeah.
So what is your reaction?
I was shaking. I remember shaking when it happened. I was, yeah, I was, I'm not shaking as I ducked, but like after the hand, I remember like the adrenaline from making that play. And it was actually kind of ironic that it was just like a not vulnerable part score. You know, it wasn't like, you know, the world was on the line for this hand or whatever, but yeah.
Gavin was our very first guest on the show, and I'm so grateful to him for having taken the leap with me, and also to his website, Bridge Winners, for allowing us to feature the setting trick on his pages. This next story from Gavin, I think, is particularly relevant in this time of great upheaval.
I went into it. So I played a little bit of pro through high school and when I went to University of Toronto, and I was playing a decent amount of pro, but everybody was telling me, don't become a bridge bum. Don't become a bridge bum. That was the standard words at every table of every tournament or club game I ever played in Toronto. They were pretty on my case about it. But I was doing pretty well with getting little bits of work when I was younger, and I loved it. I loved the game. I loved everything about it. But I was also going to school and doing a pretty bad job at school and not doing as well at bridge as I would like to have, as I wanted to. So what actually happened to me was on September 11th was my first day of second year university, and I went to class, and when I got to the lobby, I started watching the TV, saw what was going on in New York and in Washington, and my first reaction was like, wow, this could happen here. I got a little bit scared, and I started, you know, thinking of maybe I shouldn't be downtown. I want to go home, and I also had this moment where I was thinking, wow, these people were on airplanes, and you know, their lives just came to an end so abruptly, you know, in the World Trade Center or whatever. And I started thinking to myself that day, I was like, you know, what am I doing here? Life can be so short. I'm not enjoying university. I was studying economics, and it was just the most boring thing that I could ever have imagined. And I literally walked out that day, never went to another class, and just decided on September 11th that I was just going to forget school and go at bridge. I wasn't sure bridge would be successful. I didn't know, you know, like that it would turn into the type of career that I have now. It certainly wasn't as big then. So I don't know what I was thinking really, but I knew that I could always come back. Whatever education I was going to get at university was not going to lead me to a job that I wanted in my life. Like at least not what I was studying then. So either way, whether if I tried bridge and it didn't pan out, I still felt like I was going to be in a better place than had I graduated with some degree that I would never use, that would push me towards a job that I would never like.
There's a lot more people that are more qualified than I am to say who the greatest bridge player of all time is. But our second guest, Bob Hammond, is certainly in the conversation. Here's Bob's longtime colleague and fellow Hall of Famer, Bart Bramley, to introduce Bob.
Bob is incomparable. His analytical skills are second to none. And his compartmentalization is also second to none. You know, he is the best ever at putting his results behind him. You know, it's when that board is played, it's over. We can't do anything about that one. Let's worry about this one.
My mindset is to solve the set of problems or the problem that I'm working on now, and to look at the elements that might assist me rather than what am I going to have for dinner tonight?
Right.
Because as soon as I start considering that juicy steak, I might let 3-0 make.
Yeah, I did that.
And then I'll be losing my appetite for the steak. And won't even taste as good. Now, of course, if Mike Moss is buying, that changes the equation.
You anticipated one of my questions. One of the questions that I came up with in the last week as I've been thinking about getting to speak to you is, let's say you've got a match against Lev and Mike Moss. They're your opponents. And I don't know what the stakes are, but let's just say you're playing for bragging rights. Okay? Who are you choosing to be your partner in this match?
Well, I would choose Lev.
No. You misunderstood the question. You're playing against Lev and Mike Moss.
I'm playing against Lev and Mike Moss.
Yeah, they're your opponents.
I would not have much in the way of mixed emotions as to should I take a dive for these four guys.
But who are you choosing? I mean, who are you choosing as your partner to make sure that you, in fact, win the match? Let's say it's a death match, like the losing side.
Another Bob Hammond. But that's clipped from Johnny Crawford's line. So who would I pick? Well, right now, I guess I'd pick Berkowitz because he's the only guy left who will play with me. McAllister would be a close second, and we could also drag Middleman up out of the
from the tomb.
I mean, there would be other things that you could think about. You might pick some sexy girl on the grounds that she would console me if we lost. But I don't think that's likely, so I guess I'd have to go for the bridge outcome. So let's see, who would I pick as a partner in this fray? I mean, the partner that, absent Berkowitz, who we're just beginning to plow some ground with, the last significant success I had was playing with Martel in the old folks tournament in Poland. So that might not be a bad choice. I mean, Zia, at least if I lost, we could take it out on each other in backgammon. I mean, I might go for Justin because he is supreme talent and probably a good deal more energy than any of these fossils. With some kind of, but assuming no preparation at all.
Yeah.
We couldn't discuss system. We could do nothing except sit down and play.
Okay.
I would pick somebody who's relentless and tough. I might go with Maxtroth. He's just one tough cat.
Yeah.
Who's properly oriented on the winning philosophy.
Yeah.
But Hampson would be a good choice. We could branch out to Eric Greco. I've suspected Greco's been carrying Hampson for years and never getting the credit. We could go with one of the young Turks. I don't know how these kids play, and not knowing, at least you know what you're getting if you're playing with, say, Maxtroth.
Yeah.
I mean, you know that there's a certain baseline that he's not going to fail you on.
Yeah.
And also, he's not going to drift into some esoteric thought pattern as to how you had to have X, Y, and Z when there are only 11 people on the planet, him being one of them who thinks that way. So you think of that type of a player that you would opt for.
Yeah.
Frankly, against that particular pair, any guy from Central Casting would probably be good enough so as to not let the game get away. Yeah. I could copped the line from David Carter when he would get into a discussion with somebody at the bar at a convention. Carter and Nail had quite a gig, and they'd go to conventions. And one week they'd be a banker, the next week they'd be an actuary, occasionally they'd be a doctor, a lawyer, or whatever. And they always found a poker game, occasionally a bridge game.
Yeah.
And Carter would sit in the bar and he'd be talking to some guy, and somehow the discussion would get around to bridge. This is no longer likely to happen in today's environment.
Right.
And Carter would opine that he'd find a way to make the discussion a little heated. And Carter would opine he'd take the bellboy and beat him, and outside to be Nail in a bellboy's uniform.
This is the guy who's the namesake for the Nail Life Master Affairs.
That's named after G. Robert Nail.
The bellman.
Nail was one of the funniest guys ever. At one point, we're playing against Nail and Jacoby. I was playing with Krause in the trials, and they had won the previous year, but things were going very badly for them this year, and we were leading the event. It's about round 9 or 10, a pairs trials, and we were playing in one of these, a room consisting of aluminum rods and curtains hung over them, and people would come in and hand us the boards, et cetera, and we'd play. So at one point, after a significant disaster, Nail, who was about 4'8", he had stacked a bunch of chairs up, the stackable chairs, with a comment of, maybe this will make it hard for the fat boy to see my hand. So after a number of hands, maybe the fat boy wasn't having that much trouble seeing his hand, but because they weren't getting very good results. So Jacoby, who was a fairly sizable individual, Nail gets up off his stack of chairs and says, "James, I need to talk to you." And Jacoby's sort of like Mutt and Jeff. He follows him out, and Nail looks up at him and says, "Are you betting on these boys?" And Jacoby now gets very defensive and says, "Well, Bobby, I wouldn't, I may be playing badly, but there is a limit." Nail said, "Relax. If you were, I just wanted to have the action."
All right. So maybe what I said in the intro about this being a podcast for non-bridge players doesn't hold on that particular conversation. There was a lot of specific bridge players mentioned, one of whom is Jeff Maxtroth. Here's Jeff talking about the beginnings of his legendary partnership with Eric Rodwell.
I met Eric in the summer of 1974. I was 18 and he was 17. My father had always stressed to me that bridge was a partnership game. And for the last couple of years, I had a car when I was 16, so I started going to tournaments on my own. I was always looking for someone that could be my potential bridge partner. And the day I met Eric, I snapped my hands together and said, "He's the guy." I could see the talent. We were teammates on a Swiss team. Jack Oast got us together. And he had a vice squeeze to make one note drum. Well, I had never even heard of a vice squeeze before. So I thought, this guy is really brilliant, See if we can put it together with him. Eric didn't have a car at the time, and so it was like 6 months later before we actually played, which was January of 1975. We played a 2-session qualifying and final open pair in Indianapolis, and we won the open pair the first time we played. That was the first tournament victory of any kind that Eric had ever had. And in his eyes, I was the big king of bridge star, which I was hopeless. I look back to just see how bad I was, awful back then, I was a wild bidder, and I had some talent, card play talent. Because I was such a crazy bidder, I got myself in all sorts of awful contracts. So I had to learn to take tricks pretty quick if I was going to survive.
And I couldn't leave out Jeff talking about how he got started in bridge.
I used to hustle gin and euchre at the golf course, make a few extra bucks. Because, they were soft, but there were soft games there, Wasn't anything. But, I always gambled on golf and, we'd play cards after the rounds, So, so back to the card game. Yeah, I grew up playing cards. When my brother wanted to learn, my dad gave us a book, told us to read the book. And I read about 12 chapters of Ernest Revere's Contract Bridge Complete. And I thought, wow, I learned about things like finessing. I thought, this is really cool. And so I went down and kibitzed my dad for 2 consecutive Mondays, him playing with his regular partner. And I thought, wow, that's really cool how they turn the tricks for some of the things. So after 2 weeks, I said to my dad, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to play. So he had taught us a couple of things like Stamen, he had 5 card majors, whatnot. And so my brother and I went down to play the next Monday night, and we were almost average.
Wow.
And my dad was like, that's remarkable. That's really good. I can't believe you were like almost average. And I thought, so that doesn't sound good to me at all. I'm almost average. Well, but my dad keeps saying, no, that's really good. And so we went back the next week, and I saw what my dad was talking about the second week. We were next to bottom. But I thought, well, yeah, maybe almost average isn't so bad. And we went back the third week, and it was a club tournament. And my brother and I won the club tournament.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, how is this possible? Well, my brother doubled 12 contracts that night, and they all went down. That's how we won. The bidding would be over, come around to my brother, and he'd look to his left. That's right. Shrug his shoulders and say, double.
One of my favorite ways to play bridge is for money in what we call rubber bridge. Here's another superstar, Jeff Hampson, talking about the importance of rubber bridge in his learning.
First, I made the mistake of taking classes that I thought would lead me to a lucrative career rather than classes that I found interesting. My classes were not of much interest. And I was already badly bitten by the bridge bug. So in my second year of university, my parents thought, well, he's just not going to class. Let's get him to a university in Toronto. So I went to York University, not far from my home, where I could commute. But typically every morning I'd hop in the car and drive to the bridge club and play rubber bridge all day and then come home. So that didn't work a lot better. And then they said, okay, we're done paying for you to go play bridge. You can just go play bridge and not waste any more tuition.
So what kind of stake were you playing at that time?
So in Toronto, there was really only one club that had a money game. And the money games the smallest money game was a penny game. So, and I didn't want to play any bigger than that. I had $0. So I would go and play in the penny game there was a lovely old lady named Marjorie who would come in every night, and she would come in with her dog and play penny bridge, and she would, lose every night. And so I would go and play in Marjorie's game with a couple other 80-year-olds, and I'd win $25 a night. And I would think, well, this is like Christmas. And after doing that for, several months, there were some other guys in the 2-cent game and the 5-cent game and the 10-cent game. And one of them was this guy, Franco Bendoni. Franco was an Italian immigrant, huge guy, must have been 250, 300 pounds, mostly muscle, and actually a real pussycat of a guy, but imposing figure. And Franco came over one night as I was trying to cut into Marjorie's game, and Franco said, "No, you don't play with Marjorie anymore." And I said, "What? No, it's a great game for me. I can win in this game every time." He says, "It will be very bad for you if you keep playing in Marjorie's game."
One of the questions that I asked myself as I was selecting the clips for this best of episode is, who am I making this for? And in a lot of ways, I'm making this for myself. And so one of the things that Jeff Maxtroth's dad impressed upon him is finding a partner. And a great way to find a partner is by playing well.
Yeah, I had a King Jack third opposite Ace 9-8 situation, and through the through the playing of my main tricks, I came down to a position where it was certain that the queen was not onside, and it was also certain that the queen offside was not dropping. So ultimately, I ran the jack and picked up the 10-3, queen 4th. And that was a telling moment for John. We had become buddies, and he was playing with me actually out of the kindness of his heart, because I was an untested, as he calls me, I was an untested young pup. I'm still the pup in his eyes, 51-year-old pup. And at that point he thought, this guy's going to do things. And I actually was then allowed to substitute for John's regular partner on his Canadian team, because his regular partner had a conflict for a Canadian qualifying event. And so we qualified easily. And then when they, I had said, "I'll drop off. Yeah, you guys, I'll play and you can continue without me." Yeah. But John said, "No, we can't. We're not going to do that. John's not wired that way." So he said, "No, now Jeff's now my partner, and we're going to find somebody else for you to play with."
I love how Jeff says that John Gowdy just wasn't wired that way. John is one of the listeners that I've gotten a chance to meet who's encouraged me from making this show. And another is Phil Clayton, who suggested that I speak to Bart Bramley, talking about getting to play with great players. The reason I wanted to share this clip from Bart with you is because just his excitement, because he's getting to play with Sidney Lazard.
Sidney is one of the greatest players of all time. Sidney told me that during the late 50s, he thought he was the best player in the world. So John Sutherland had the idea of finding a partner for Sidney, and his idea was me. So he called me up because we were friends and suggested it to me. And I was ecstatic at the idea, because I knew Sidney was the guy that had played that 6-diamond hand from the mid-50s, where it's a very famous hand. You've probably read about it.
I don't know it. No, I don't know it.
Basically, after passing for the first couple of rounds, he jumped to 6 diamonds on a 4-card suit.
Wow.
And caught 6-card support in the dummy, and then made it on a non-simultaneous double squeeze.
Huh.
Yes, this is one of the greatest one-man tour de force. Tour de force. It's one of the most spectacular solo hands of all time. Well, it's my pick for the most spectacular. So I learned about this hand 50 years ago, and I was ecstatic to be playing with the man who had done that.
Wow.
Sidney and I played on Edgar Kaplan's teams for the rest of his life, and he died in the fall of '97. That was the fall of '95, and I was one of Edgar's teammates when he won his last event in the spring of '97. For some reason, which I can't recall right now, Sidney had a commitment to do something else. This was on the 2-day Swiss at the end of the Spring Nationals. Again, it's one of my best events. So I was playing with my friend Walt Schaefer in that event, and we had Kaplan and Kay, and we had Geir Helgemo and Brian Glubach. Okay, so I'm digressing from the Sydney stories here, but this is one worth telling. So he qualified easily enough, and the second day, Helgemo and Glubach weren't running too well. So, and Helgemo had to go home after the first session of the finals. So he and Glubach played a couple of matches, and Walter and I think, sat out a match. But when it came time for the fourth match, Helgemo put in a special request to play a match with Edgar because he knew Edgar was sick.
Yeah.
And so request granted. And during that match, Helgemo had his most famous hand that he's ever played, his 6-diamond hand, where he made 6 diamonds on a super intra finesse in a suit in which he had, let me get it straight here.
Against Ralph Katz?
Yes. Where he had ace king 6/4 opposite 9/7 third, and he had low to the 7 and picked up lefties 8 and 1 by taking repeated finesses against righty, who was Ralph. And the lefty wasn't too shabby either. That was Richard Pavlicek. At my table, Kit Woolsey missed that play. That hand occurred in these 7 boards that he played with Edgar, the most famous Helgemo hand.
Wow.
And this hand was
I never knew
legendary.
I never knew that Edgar was his partner with that.
Right. So by the time the dinner break was over, this hand was already legendary.
Wow.
And during the break, I christened this hand a gift for Edgar, because it truly was.
Yeah.
And then
wow.
Walt Schaefer and I played the whole evening session with Norman and Edgar. We won all the matches, and we won the event.
Oh, man.
So that was the last win for both Kaplan and Kay.
Edgar Kaplan was a legendary figure in the bridge world. Our next guest, James Holstauer, is already one of the greatest Jeopardy players of all time. He also aspires to being a world-class bridge player. Here's Jeff Maxtroth to introduce him.
Josh Don knows James well. They both have 4-year-old daughters who are friends, I think. So
yeah.
Josh arranged a game in San Francisco for James, and he asked Zia and I to participate. We both did. I got knocked around pretty good in that game. They were beating up on me from all sides. One hand in particular, I remember, I finally got a hand. I thought, all right. I had like 7 solid hearts, the ace of spades, the ace something of diamonds, and queen in a club. So I opened 2 clubs. And the bidding goes 2 spades on my left, 3 clubs by Zia, my partner, 5 spades by James on my right. So this is very annoying to begin with. Right in my face, 5 spades. So we're ball against not. So I thought, well, I'll just bid 6 hearts. Surely they'll take a sacrifice or whatever. So I bid 6 hearts and 3 quick passes. And the ace of clubs is led. I have queen in a club, and dummy has jack 10, 9, 6. Oh no. So I have the queen of clubs. I think I have a discard in the dummy. I have the queen of clubs out. The false card, desperately. It goes ace of clubs, low, king. So now I thought, I can't play the queen now. I had to put it back in my hand. What did I tell? They were all laughing at me in that. I appreciate the humor on that. That's the most remarkable hand I can remember playing the game. He's an extremely talented player, very gifted. He's got a lot of sharp card plays he was making. I was impressed.
Now, here's James.
I really taught myself the game when I was, I want to say, 14 or 15, just kind of on a lark. I was bored and decided this is a game that I know drew in kind of intellectuals from all over the place, and I thought it might be fun. So I would not say I learned to play the game even decently for another at least 10 years beyond that. But yeah, that was the first start I got was just as a teenager.
And you said you learned to play as a 14-year-old. How did you get exposed? How did you get exposed to bridge?
So, I would play a little bit on, I think it was Yahoo back in the day. They used to host these games. They were not of a high caliber, shall we say. But, it was enough to get me interested. And so I bought Watson's book on playing the hand, and I think Goran's Bridge Complete. Those were my first two things. And I really kind of developed an interest in bridge books that to this day I probably have a couple hundred on my shelf. The wife constantly complains we don't need more of them, but, they're something I find interesting.
My conversation with James took place in September, just 2 months after the North American Bridge Championships were held in his hometown of Las Vegas.
Well, in a way, there was very fortuitous timing because this aired right before they had the NABC in Las Vegas right here. And, normally if I go to an NABC, it'll only be for a few days, because I got to get back home, tend to everything here. But since this one was in town, I was able to attend almost every day of it, meet a lot of the big personalities, probably at least half of bridge players are Jeopardy fans. So it was funny. I'm going out there and Jeff Maxtroth is walking up to me to introduce himself. It was amazing. So he and I are corresponding a little bit via email now. He's giving me some advice to get me started, which is, amazing of him. I've worked up some personal contacts with a lot of the pros here in town. Fred Gittleman has been really nice. Josh Don. I got together to play with them. Bobby Levin, too. I got to play with Bobby's stepson, Shane Blanchard, at the Nationals, and we put up a great score in one of the open events. I would say that for the most part, I was treading water at the NABC events this July, but, to do that in an open field at a national is just an amazing feeling for me. I know I have a lot of room to grow, but, now I have people who are willing to help me get there, so that's kind of incredible.
With so many great players taking an interest in James's bridge, I look forward to seeing if the statement he made in the Bridge Bulletin about becoming a world-class player will become true.
Yeah, I really, it's ambitious, I know, but I think that's the level I could get to if I really put my head into it. And one thing about me is I never half-ass anything. So, if I decide to go this route, it will be, with the intent of getting to that tip-top level at some point.
Our next guest is sociologist and bridge player Dr. Samantha Punch. Sam is a mainstay on the Scottish women's team, which just last year qualified for the Venice Cup for the very first time. Sam is also undertaking the academic study of the sociology of bridge at Stirling University. And you started playing bridge when you were finishing your PhD?
When I finished it, yeah. It was the thing that I did to fill the gap of the PhD, yeah. I'd come across mini bridge earlier one time when I was traveling in Latin America. I'd played mini bridge in Brazil quite randomly, and I just kind of made a note that one day, I wanted to learn the proper bridge, but that was when I was about 20, but I didn't actually get round to it till I was nearly 30. But I think that's something that stuck with me, is that you can sow a seed with a potential new player, and it doesn't matter that they don't run with it straight away. If you've sown that seed and you've attracted them to the game, they might always return at any point. So it never worries me when we're trying to attract new players that people dip in and out of it, because I'm often convinced that once they've tasted it, they will come back at some point in their lives.
Sam also shares James's love for bridge books. Here she is talking about her favorite bridge book, Bob Hammond's At the Table.
I was just at a bridge congress, which is like one of your regionals in Scotland years ago, and someone recommended it to me because I was asking everyone. I went through a phase of asking a lot of questions to a lot of people about bridge, and one of them was what your favorite bridge book was, because I was on a mission to read a book every 2 weeks.
Wow.
Someone suggested it, and they were right. It's definitely the best book, I think.
Wow.
For me, as a sociologist, it goes into the non-technical aspects of the game about how you manage yourself and your partner and emotions and stuff like that, and how you develop resilience and be mentally tough.
I noticed you do have a lot of bridge books at your house, but to read bridge books, a bridge book in 2 weeks, that's bridge books can be kind of a slog, I think. They're thick and dense. So that's an impressive. Can you give me some more?
I read some thin ones as well.
Yeah.
They weren't all thick.
Did you read At the Table in 2 weeks?
Oh, I think I read that in a couple of days. I couldn't put it down.
Wow.
But this was when I was learning, and I was really, really hungry to learn. So I made it. My New Year's resolution was to do that, and by the end of the year, I'd done it.
I like Sam's idea of reading a bridge book every 2 weeks as a means of game improvement. Now here's Cor Gilbeck talking about a critical concept, a critical practice in his own development. Those of you really paying attention will realize that we re-recorded Cor's audio.
So the one moment I can point at to say that was the moment where I think my game improved the most was during our training sessions for the 2003 Junior World Championships, and we were doing the Danish Bridge Federation organized these training events and tournaments where we were together with the open teams and the women's teams, maybe the seniors too. I can't remember how many were involved back then. And there were different speakers, and one was Morten Lund Madsen, who was slightly older than junior at that point. So he was the junior generation before me. He was giving a talk about the mental aspects of the game. And some of it was some beautiful poetry about keeping your partner's mental bucket full of what, I don't know. It was a pretty picture that I'm sure everybody loved. But he said something very concrete that that simple mind like mine found really helpful. And that was make the agreement with your partner that no matter what happens at the table, good or bad, just make it a rule that you don't say anything.
Adam Vildosky calls this practice the Keller Convention and claims to have invented it.
Migri said that one of the things from your notes, and I like this, is that you do not discuss you do not discuss hands at the table.
Right. I mean, that's the notes, but that goes on my convention card too. It's really the only bridge convention that I've invented. It's not even a convention. It's an approach to the game.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started back in the early 80s. I was playing in the San Diego Nationals. I was playing with a guy from, we met when we were both in college. And he was a pretty good player, but he wanted to discuss every hand. And not only did he want to discuss every hand, but, right after the hand, but he was not a good analyst. He was a much better player than he was an analyst. Most of us are the other way around. But, it seemed to me as if he always had something to say and it was always wrong. And that's an exaggeration, but I didn't even care.
Yeah.
What I really found, and I've never played golf, but I'm told this is similar to golf. In golf, you have to play the current hole. You can't think about the previous ones. So, in bridge, I'm like barely good enough to play one hand at a time. I can't be thinking about the previous hands.
Gotcha.
So, a hand that's in the past, I want it to be in the past.
Right.
And, every tournament we play, we get hand records. If we play on bridge base, it's even better because we get a hand record and a complete bidding and play record.
Right.
So there's, more than enough opportunity to go over the hand as much as you want. I just don't think that the table is the right place for it. And, and if I have to, a lot of the time people are discussing hands at the table because they want to justify their actions. And, I don't care. Maybe I did the right thing. Maybe I did the wrong thing. Maybe my partner did. It doesn't matter. It doesn't, if we got a good result or a bad result, it doesn't matter whose fault it is. We still have to play the next hand regardless.
Right.
And, I think a lot of newer players, at least, when I haven't played in bridge clubs for a while, not regularly anyway, but the newer players take their cue from the older players, and the older players, a lot of them will yell at their partners or otherwise be unkind. We don't see too much yelling at the opponents now, but want to project. Anytime there's a bad result, it has to be partner's fault. But, that's not, even if it were true, it's not productive. Your partner's not going to play any better if you yell at him. I mean, some people imagine that's so. But what I find is the people who tend to yell the loudest are the people who are the least secure about their own game. This is probably true in other areas of life, but it's bridge where I notice it.
Right.
And I know this partly from introspection, because when I was young, I did the same thing. I looked at the other players, and my partner and I would get a bad result, and I knew that I was a wonderful player. So if we had a bad result, it must be partner's fault. And if I played a wrong card, well, it must be something partner did or didn't do that had inspired me to play that wrong card. Even though objectively I knew that, I made lots of mistakes and I had a lot to learn. But, in the heat of the moment, you always want to project anything that bad that happens onto partner. And that, that maybe protects your ego, but it's not a useful way to improve or even to get good results in the moment.
When you're locked in, like my next guest, Migri describes herself having been on this hand, you don't need to explain your actions to partner.
You are talking about accomplishment and bad results. There is one match that I'll never forget. We are playing the NEC in Japan, not you and I. I was playing the NEC in Japan.
Yeah.
The final. I was playing with one of my favorite partners from Israel, Michael Barrel.
Yeah.
And we were leading by more than 6 teams with 1 quarter to go. And in the first board, the Japanese opponents beat a slam like 10%, and they made it.
Uh-huh.
The second board, they beat the game on 10%, and they made it. The third board, they opened a weak now trump, and I had 6 spades and 4 hearts, and I had to decide if you show majors or to show 1 major. So I showed 1 major, and sure enough, I played there when we were called for game in the other major.
Yeah.
And I knew that the result would not be duplicated at the other table because they are not going to open 1-0 trump. And then the next hand, we doubled 1-0 trump, and it made. And everything went like that, and I was feeling that I'm losing a lot of weight during this match, which is good. And just the imps were slipping away, and I knew that we are maybe tied now, maybe a little minus. And it was really a nightmarish set. Everything they did was right. Everything we did was wrong. And not that we did something necessarily bad, but it was just wrong.
Yeah.
And then came the last board. And Michael led something, and I won the trick. And in spite of the disastrous set, I forced myself to sit there and think. When all I wanted to do is to finish that quarter, I wanted to just run out and say, I've had enough of it.
Yeah.
And I sat there for 10 minutes. Until I figured out how to break a squeeze.
Wow.
And that's sort of my one moment in bridge that I'm proud of.
Wow.
Not about the defense, but that I managed to do it under those very unfavorable circumstances.
Wow.
And we won. And that board was the ones that matter. So, yeah, that's my happiest experience.
You might have heard Migri mention that she and I were partners in that clip. And our partnership almost didn't get started because I remember speaking to her on the phone for the first time and not being able to understand her. Gavin Wolpert describes our next guest, Steve Weinstein, as having a relentless work ethic at the table.
Well, it really helps that my partner is, without a doubt, unquestionably one of the best players in the world. So you start out with that. And we play hard and we practice hard. And, we try to really... Like, if you're going to define us as a pair, I would say our biggest strength is we consistently hit the ball hard to the opponent's backhand. And we don't really make a lot of unforced errors. Everybody makes a lot of errors. But comparatively, we don't make a ton of unforced errors.
Man.
I would say that is what our biggest strength is, would be the lack of it being a huge weakness.
Like, how often does Bobby do something where you're like, man, that was really cool?
Definitely reasonably often. Like he does plays or he makes bids and stuff. And I'm like, thinking about it and like normally when we screw up, we almost never go over it right away. And both of us are pretty good at reflecting on what went wrong and working out, like, if I misplay a hand or Bobby misplays a hand, we don't really need to say anything. Each of us will work out what we did wrong. And, but if there's some defensive carding situation, we'll go over it. But he's for many years amazed me with some of the greatness that he's shown.
Like if he misplays the hand, for example, will you go into the hand in your mind and like see why, like the reason, like, and come up with your own reason for why he would have done that? Or do you even bother with that?
I certainly don't do it at the time. When I'm thinking about the hands later, I'll sometimes do it or sometimes won't. But, I try to relax a lot as dummy. It's not like I'm worried about how Bobby Levin plays a bridge hand. So, there's certainly times that I've reviewed hands and stuff like that, and I'll try to think about what he was thinking at the time or why he did what he did. And oftentimes there's, some great reason that I didn't really notice at the table. But like I said, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about his hands. I think about my hands and the hands that we misdefended or we misbid. And those are the ones that I'm most concerned about.
On the other end of the spectrum, Dave Caprera plays bridge mostly with his wife, Annie.
I've been playing bridge for, I got to think about this. 1978, I played my first duplicate game. I had just finished undergraduate, and it was very fortunate that I had not learned about duplicate as an undergrad, because there would have been a fairly good chance I might not have made it through undergrad. But after undergrad, and with Annie, my wife of 42 years, then my girlfriend, we started playing duplicate. And I've loved it, and I've played ever since. Give you a bridge hand. You pick up stiff ace, 5 small, king and 1, king 10 fifth. Got it? Stiff ace, 5 small, king and 1, king 10 fifth. Partner opens a diamond, you bid a heart. Partner bids a spade. You don't like your choices a whole lot. I'll tell you, you tend to open fairly aggressively, so I'm going to impose a no trump on you. So you bid a no trump. And partner bids 2 clubs. So now this hand that was kind of an awkward, misfitting hand has all of a sudden become humongous. And the question is, what do you bid over 2 clubs? Now, I'm playing with my wife in the Denver Regional. And this was some years ago. I don't think I hope we wouldn't have the same problem today. But I came up with a master bid of 3 hearts, what's sometimes called a bloomer. My hand has gotten much better as a result of partner's 2 club bid, and I wanted to make the strongest bid I could in support of clubs. Unfortunately, we weren't on the same page, and she passed, and 3 hearts was not a very successful contract. After the session was over, I went to my friend Mike Bassell. Mike, a world-class player. But by then, I think the word had gotten around a little bit. And so Mike had probably heard the story. I asked Mike, you pick up this hand, blah, blah, blah. What do you bid over 2 clubs? And Mike's very quick. And in a shot, he said, well, I don't bid 3 hearts, because if I do, I'll end up sleeping on the couch.
3 hearts.
Yeah.
Just looking at that. Gosh.
And I've given it to a lot of people, and everybody wants to bid something. I mean, if you had to bid just 1 bid for your life, probably 5 clubs. Yeah. Although you can construct minimums that make 6 clubs. Should 4 clubs be forcing in this sequence? Probably. I don't know. I don't have that agreement with anyone. Frankly, if I were to do it again, I would still bid 3 hearts. I believe that is the best technical bid. But as I coach my juniors, do not make a bid unless you have an agreement with partner. Juniors do that a lot. And so it was a mistake for me to have done it at that point in time, I guess. But I think I could do it with Annie tomorrow, and I wouldn't have a problem.
What do you actually make on the hand?
I don't remember. Probably 5 or 6 clubs. I honestly, she had some sort of, she was a 4x1. I remember the hearts were, it was a 5-1 heart fit. So, I mean, if he had the stiff heart rather than having, a 5th minor suit card, it probably only made 5 clubs.
Did you make 3 hearts?
Nah, I got slaughtered.
Were you vulnerable?
I'm going to tell you, this was like 8 years ago. Can't really remember. I mean,
what did you say when she put down the dummy?
I play bridge with other partners as well, but primarily my wife. And playing with your spouse is sometimes very difficult. If you're playing with a partner with whom you don't have a personal relationship, you can talk about hands and deals and problems, I think, a little bit more rationally and with a little bit less emotion. Frankly, I don't think either Annie or I is very good at keeping our emotions to ourselves. It's something that we definitely have to work on. You watch the top players, and if something goes wrong, watch Bob Hamm. Something goes wrong, you think he was watching paint dry. It's awesome. Playing with my wife, it's not exactly like that. And you sometimes have conversations that get a little out of hand. I might say, why didn't you play the 7 of diamonds? And she might say, why didn't you put out the garbage last night? There's the interpersonal relationships of playing with your spouse that sometimes make it more difficult. So what happened at the table? Oh, probably Armageddon night,
Just to really show the contrast, here's Stevie again talking about playing with Paul Soloway.
He was one of the all-time greatest bridge players. He was such a hero, such a, original, great ethics, great player, great tempo, great partner, great opponent. I mean, huge winner, greatest talents ever. He's the reason I actually started playing in regionals is at some point a number of years ago, it was for a Bob or Joyce Hampton team. I play on Joyce's team, who I've become very close with now in some regionals, like 4 or 5 regionals a year. But Soloway called me up and said, would you like to play a regional with me? And I hadn't played a regional in like 10 years or something like that, because I was working. And I was like, wow, let me call you back. And I'm like, Liz, Paul Soloway just asked me to play a regional. And she's like, well, you got to play. And I'm like, well, yeah, I got to play. I mean, I'm so excited. This is amazing. And it was like, I went and I played with Paul on this regional team, and it was, then I started playing with him. He was my semi-regular regional partner on either Joyce or Bob Hampton teams. Well, it's Joyce Hill now, but just the way he composed himself and his demeanor and his unflappability, his personality, he's just so terrific. I remember one time we were playing, and we were playing against a pair that, let's just say, Paul and I were both pretty sure we're not on the up and up. And Paul one time pulled out 2 pass cards by mistake. And I said, that's how we do our minimums and compared to our maximums. How do you guys do it? And Paul just looked at me. First I thought he was going to kill me, and then he just started laughing. He couldn't decide whether he was going to kill me or hug me.
How did the other pair respond?
Sometimes you hear things and you're just I don't know if I get it, or I'm in shock, or somebody says something that you don't know how to respond to. And it's just there's silence, but it's one of those things that they probably came back to later that night and said, "Oh shit, that's what he said." You know, like I don't think that it was like clear what I was saying at the time to them.
Yeah,
that's my guess. I know in my experiences when people have said something to me that have caught me off guard, where I'm like, you know, you tilt your head a little bit like a dog, you know, and then move, and then like later you'll be like, oh shit, that's what was said. You know, damn dog.
Yeah.
Like also, I just remember playing with him, and I wish I remembered the hand. I'm terrible at remembering bridge hands, like loose hands, but you can remember every bridge hand he played. But I usually remember the disasters, and that's about it. But we were defending some contract, and it seemed like he led this thing, and it seemed like we was going to catch this, and we're going to catch this, and we're going to catch this, and then hope to get that. And then like at trick 2, he just like instantly plays a club. And I'm sitting there for like 5 minutes, like, why would he play a club? Like, this doesn't add up to me. And then like eventually I worked it out, which I mean, I'm pleased with myself for working it out. But after 5 minutes, I worked out that he was breaking this up and this end play squeeze thingamajiggy, whatever.
Wow.
And he just did it instantly. And it was like, you only play to beat the hand. And I was in awe. I was like, that is pretty scary.
Wow.
You know, he was such a great natural player. And he was so ethical, and he was just so beyond reproach to me. And, you know, such a great personality that I miss him to this day. I never took his phone number out of my cell phone, you know?
One of my favorite things about bridge is just how accessible all these great players are. You can find the best of the best at the North American Bridge Championships, what we like to call the Nationals. Here's bridge teacher Morris Jones.
I tell my beginning bridge players and students to say, you want to have the best time of your life, make plans to go to the Nationals. And they think I'm crazy, but, you know, you go to the Nationals and you see not just a small novice newcomer game, you see a ballroom full of them.
Right.
And it's a magical experience. You get the vendors with the books and making name tags and badges and the speakers and the talks and all of that. So, you know, not many can be convinced. I remember at the end of Backwash Squeeze, how he had to talk his new player partner into going to Chicago to the Nationals. But you get there and it's this magical environment. You're suddenly surrounded with your people. You hear bridge talk everywhere and those things. And it is great. It's not necessarily, like I say, it's not that you're going to do great necessarily, but we know bridge is a numbers game. The more you play, the more good results you're going to get eventually. A fun story about that tournament in Toronto. Scott Campbell is setting up for the midnight zip knockouts. And I said, you know, Scott, I'm here. He paired me up with Dan Storch from the ACBL, their public publicity chairman.
Oh, yeah,
He's
sure.
just a delightful fellow. Yeah, and Dan said, listen, I brought a bottle of Malbec here, so we're good. And Dan and I had a couple of pickup teammates. Yeah. I no idea who they were. It didn't matter. But in the game were a lot of the kids from the youth bridge NABC that was going to go on the following weekend. In fact, that whole tournament was full of kids, and it was delightful to see.
Yeah.
And Dan and I managed to win the first 3 matches, and we got to the 4th with our teammates. And sure enough, I'm sitting down at the table against Zach Grosack from Double Dummy.
Right.
And and he gets into a bad 3-no trump contract, and I set him, you know. Yeah. And Dan looks across the table at me and he says, do you know what this would mean if I got to go back to work on Monday and tell him I beat Zach Grosack in a knockout? Yeah, of course, that 3-no trump board was the only good one we got in the round.
Oh, man.
So we didn't get to say we beat Zach Grosack, but we played him in the final of a knockout.
Speaking of Zach Grosack, here he is talking about playing with his bridge hero, Zia Mahmood.
Played against Zia in DC. He's on Vanita Gupta's team, and I'm playing for a guy named Larry Lebowitz, who I think you've met.
Adam's Larry.
He's new up and comer. Great guy. We are ahead. Larry leaves the match at halftime. We're like ahead by 20. We keep the lead in the third quarter, and we're playing against Zia. And like we're doing good stuff, and Zia gets me on a board, and I'm like, oh my god, he's great. He like opened like something. He totally got me on the hand.
Yeah.
So then I get him back later. I like spec double a 3-0, and we get 800 after he opens a no trump. And he's just like, well. Anyway, we end up losing by like this fraction, like by like 3 or 4.
Mm-hmm.
And after the round, he says, okay, we'll play. He comes up to me and says, okay, we'll play. And I say, and he's like, what's the next pair game? And I said, Blue Ribbons. He says, fine, you're on. So I had this amazing privilege of playing with him, but he's tough. He's tough because when you're playing with someone who's better than you, especially for me, like me playing with someone who's better than me, like knows like better than me and like knows more than me. It's like hard for me to play my own game because I play so out of my mind. There was one session we had one. We had one great session, but we had this amazing story where like, people do terrible things against Zia because just the same effect he has on his partners, he has on his opponents. People do terrible things. We have the total misunderstanding to this horrible slam that has no play. It has some play, actually, but on the lie of the cards, none whatsoever. The opponent revokes once, and Zia's going to play, and Zia knows he's going down on the breaks, whatever. He goes to play something the opponent revokes. So Zia says, no, take it back. We're not going to win like that.
Right.
So the opponent picks up his cards. The play keeps going. He's trying to get up for down 1 or down 2. Zia's given some line. And the guy revokes again. And it's extremely clear he's revoked again. No. And so we stop for a second. Zia stops for a second. I'm kind of into my own space. And Zia, and the play keeps going. And the guy just like clearly, like 2 tricks later, shows up with a card in that suit. And I Zia looks up at me, and I'm sitting there, and Zia looks at me like this deadpan, with his like deadpan face. He just looks at me, like, and I have to leave. Like I just start dying. I've never laughed so hard in my life. I get up from the table. I'm like crying because I'm laughing so hard. I needed like 5 full minutes to come back. The director comes over finally because it's like Twilight Zone. We go plus 1460. And it's like, oh my God, it's like magic playing with this dude.
Let's say that you take Mojo's advice and you go to the Nationals and it's the 3rd from last day and you don't have a game, so you're bumming around. That was the situation that Anam Teba found herself in. Granted, she's a pretty good player.
So literally Zia comes up to you and says, hey, Anam, would you like to play in the mixed Swiss? Or somebody told him that you were free, or like what?
I'm not sure how it all happened. All I know is I got asked to play, and I was not about to say no. It was Billy Miller who came up to me and was like, so you want to play with Zia? I was like, yes.
So you had agreed to play on the team already, and Billy came up to you and said, we've got your partner?
There was no agreement. I was just loitering around the playing area with no game, and they just got knocked out, and Billy came up to me and he's like, so do you want to play with Zia? And I said, am I supposed to say no to that? Is this a rhetorical question? And so then I met up with Zia. He gave me his system notes with it.
Yeah.
And he's like, tell me what you want to play out of this. And we met the next day, maybe a couple of hours before we had to play, and discussed our card. And then there we were.
How much of the notes did you play?
We played everything in the notes except his 1 no trump structure.
Why did you not play the 1 no trump structure?
He was not playing like a very standard 1 no trump structure. There were relays after the transfers that had different implications. So rather than playing a totally artificial relay structure beyond the initial transfers, I decided that probably the best way to not lose was to not have a system disaster. But everything else we played. So I actually left the 1 no trump stuff for last because I figured that's probably the most standard thing ever. And I read all the other little agreements about, Jacoby or game tries and slam tries and all this other stuff I read and was fine with. I left the 1-no trump and the 2-no trump structure for the last thing, because that's the thing I can usually just glance over and be like, okay, I can remember like all this stuff.
Yeah.
But I got a surprise when I read these notes, and I was like, And, it was like 5 pages of totally random relays that I was like, let's not do this. But all of the other stuff, the small agreements, little nuanced inferences that were in the notes, all of that we played.
And how did you two play?
It was mostly good. He was a very kind partner to me. And if I was a little bit soft on the board or whatever, could have done better, or we had a weird result, he was nothing but kind. So that helped. The first couple of matches, I was really nervous. But after that, it seemed okay.
You were nervous?
Well, yeah. Like second guessing what I should do, and the standard thing that comes with nerves.
Yeah.
But then I was like, well, I'm just gonna do what I do, and it doesn't matter who my partner is. And that was a winning formula for that event.
Did you ever say to Zia, did you ever express your, it sounds like it was a thrill for you. Did you express that to him?
So you've seen me at the bridge table, right?
Yeah.
I look miserable, no matter what. Or as you put it, the one time, I'm very intense.
I don't remember saying that, but I can imagine having said it.
And so I don't think Zia got to see this intense or serious nature that I had, because I was so happy that I got asked to be on this team and I was playing with this person, that it was probably one of the very few times I looked happy at a bridge table.
Did you, what did your parents say when you won this event?
They didn't think it was a big deal. They don't really know much about bridge, so to them it's like winning some competition, which they're familiar with. I've won other competitions, and they're like, well, congratulations. They didn't know how, and they still don't know how huge that was.
Since we're on the subject of Zia, I asked Hall of Famer Michael Rosenberg about playing in the Bermuda Bowl with him.
I played 3 times with Zia. The first time we were 4th. The second time we were 3rd. The third time we were 2nd. And then he broke out with me and he won.
The Bermuda Bowl is the event I would most like to win. Here's Aussie star Nabil Edgerton talking about playing in it.
Bowl was so fun. I love that tournament. The 2 times I've ever played it, it's just I don't know. That's, as a bridge player, I live for that kind of thing. And it's just something so awesome about just playing the best and every little thing mattering, and kind of just testing yourself, getting all that time to prepare for it, and then just going out and testing yourself. It's so cool.
If you're looking for a mentor in bridge, you can't do much better than Michael Rosenberg. We are very fortunate to have him leading the U.S. junior program.
Here's what happened. In 2013, I was asked to be a mentor in this program, which has just started, and I got into it. There was 3 or 4 mentors, and it was pretty disorganized, and I decided what I would do was I would take a more hands-on role. So I eventually started conscripting more mentors. I was trying to get a lot of good players to be mentors, and having it be more organized in terms of the whole process. And Barry Gordon and I basically took over the organization at that point in 2013. And then at some point he dropped out. So it's been just me for a while now. And Debbie was also very involved in the beginning for the first couple of years. I think she was very involved. And then she became more involved in her own Silicon Valley Youth Bridge project. So she kind of dropped away from what I'm doing. She became more and more involved as time went on. I started just
working as a mentor with one group, and then I eventually just took over the whole thing.
Is it a job for you? I mean, is it joyful? What's like? It's
mostly joy. It's certainly a job. I spend a lot of time on it, and it's very. I'm never expected to get a huge production out of it because teaching bridge is really difficult. Yeah. And my hope is that I somehow what I say gets through. A little of what I say gets through to a lot of people, and for a few people, that they really come out and learn a lot and become experts in the game. So I certainly worked a lot with the Grosacks when they were already good players, but I think they did learn from me. And the best example I have for what effect I've had is this one junior who signed onto the program a couple of years ago, and he has sent me literally 5,000 emails. Which he sent me about 60 just last Thursday.
60.
So yeah, he sends a lot of emails, and I can see that he's obviously changed so much from when I started with him. He's learned a lot, and there's still so much to learn. I like to say in bridge that there's about 10 billion things to learn. And even if you learn 4 or 5 billion, there's still 5 or 6 billion you don't know.
Right.
I don't think anybody really yet has come close to mastering bridge. There's still tons of things that people don't know or understand. And there's lots of things that people think they do understand, which they understand wrongly. If you approach me with the attitude that I don't know or I'm not sure, you have a much better chance of learning and coming to the truth.
Right.
So I tell all the juniors who are in the program is they can ask me any question anytime and I'll answer it. And if they all took advantage of that, then I couldn't. But they don't. So I'm able to do it. Then one of the things I sort of like to do was to play for half the time and then go to a Google chat room for the other half of the time, because that way you get more involvement from the juniors to ask them questions and have them answer and have them say what they're thinking. Whereas at the table, they'll often just not talk and they'll just listen to what you say.
Right.
I like to get them involved in playing. Yeah. And now what we're doing for many of the groups, which I think is quite a good thing, is let's say they have a team match of 16 boards. So the mentor will tell each of the 8 juniors to write up 2 hands themselves, and then in email, and then they'll have a back and forth comment about what they write up. The best mentors for these matters have been Dave Caprera. He's got an amazing amount of feedback from juniors and involvement from juniors that almost no other mentor has done, including myself. He's done an amazing job.
In addition to having Michael Rosenberg as a mentor while he was in the junior program, our next guest, Adam Grosack, is fortunate to have both Jeff Maxtroth, who talked about his partnership with Eric Rodwell earlier, bring him along in the professional ranks.
We play with a very nice couple, and Eric plays with the wife, and Jeff plays with the husband. And when Jeff is playing with the husband, I play with Eric, and vice versa. I would play with Jeff when Eric is playing with the wife.
So did you get a call or an email from one of them saying, hey, we would like to make you a part of this team?
I've had like multiple different. So basically, here's how my and Zach's first encounters with Jeff and Eric worked.
Yeah.
We played against him in the Spin Golds 2 years in a row. When we had kind of I think we were actually one of the years we were playing on a team with Sam Dinkin and Jank, and we had a lot of fun against them, and we played hard, and they liked us. They took a liking to us, and we were laughing while we were playing, and they liked us. They liked our tempo. They knew that like we were very ethical, and that's like very, very important to them. Just doing the right thing when it comes to card play, because there's different levels of ethical, and Zach and I sort of work really hard to be like hyper ethical, which almost like all bridge players you'd like to think do that, but they don't miss anything at the table.
Right.
And those types of things from young people, that's what they really like to see, and I think that's something that they were really happy about, and they took a liking to us. And anytime we had questions, we would ask them and try to get this. So they did a lot they've done so many things, and we've just like become friends even over the last couple of years. So Jeff knew that I was becoming a bridge professional after work. So I ended up contacting him, asking for advice on what the best things to do and all that sort of stuff. And Jeff was like, actually, I may have an opportunity for you. And that's kind of how it worked.
Right. That's got to be pretty validating for you starting out as a pro to get an opportunity to play with Jeff Maxtroth, who is very, very near the top. Greatest of all time. He's like very, very much in that conversation.
Oh yeah. And when I play with them, I've learned so much. I mean, the first tournament that we played in Gatlinburg, we did well. We won the tournament, and I was just like taking notes, writing down hands, like going through. I'm working really, really hard to take the advice that they give me and put it to heart. And I think like the second or third tournament, one of them I had sort of a tough tournament where we didn't win any of the knockouts. And it wasn't any particular thing, but there were a lot of things that I could have done better. And, I study and I learn from my mistakes. I'm not, bridge is a very humbling game. So right. I wasn't, I'm there to learn, and they know that I work really, really hard when I play, and they sort of know what I bring to the table. I'm not a perfect bridge player, but I work hard, and I'm not going to make a mistake out of laziness, and I'm constantly looking for ways to improve my own bridge game.
For much of his success in both open and junior competition, Adam has played with his brother Zach. So when did you realize that you were going to be like Zach Grosack was going to be sitting across from you for the better part of your bridge playing career? How old were you when that happened?
So Zach initially was resistant to learning bridge, but not for any particular reason. It's just, it was something my mom and I played, and my older brother didn't play, and my dad didn't play. So Zach was sort of like not really that into it, but then eventually he tried it and he really liked it.
Yeah.
And then he started playing, and then he would bid like very, 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 very by the seat of the pants, and it would just like piss me off. So I just wouldn't play with him. And eventually he learned how to bid. I mean, he still struggles with this concept on a daily basis, but he knows that he's a very, very good bidder now. He is very creative in auctions. Sometimes arguably too creative, but he's very, very creative. So when did I know that I was going to be playing with Zach more? I mean, when we started winning a bunch, when we were younger. I mean, we just started doing very well. I mean, we grew up in the same bedroom.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, we grew up in the same bedroom. We split a bedroom for 7. Like we've talked bridge so much. We understand bridge together. It's just. Yeah, we very rarely have misunderstandings about stuff. It's not really possible.
Yeah,
because we have the same understanding.
Sometimes Adam and Zach go at each other. Here's Nabil Edgerton talking about a novel approach to partnership harmony.
I had a really good chat yesterday with a good friend of mine, bridge player Liam Milne. A few people will know him from Bridge Winners and that kind of thing. But it was about just working in a partnership and dealing with adversity together and that kind of thing, and some like really good things came out of it. I guess with my partner Andy Hung and I, we like put so much work into practicing for the bowl and that kind of thing, and I'm just constantly, basically our dialogue between each other is a lot of just me trying to, okay, how do we improve on this? How do we improve on that? What about this system spot? Blah, 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 blah. I kind of just write down every little system or auction that I find interesting, we don't have agreements on. And I just realized that our like dialogue, it's like when we first started playing bridge together, we would just like, we just and we still are. We're really good friends. We get along so well, and it was just fun and that kind of thing. And I realize now that like our dialogue's almost a bit too serious, and we've taken like almost not taken the friendship out of it, but you know, the bridge was first, like, and like, you know, our friendship should come first in that sense. So one really good bit of advice that he got from a sports psychologist was just organizing partnership dates just once a week or once every 2 weeks. And the only rule is to just, you can't talk about bridge. And it's just cultivating that friendship or reminding, you know, yourselves that like, yeah, we love this game. We're really serious about it, but you know, we're friends, like, and we're doing this together. And I think that's something that Andy and I were missing, and I hope that that's going to be like a good step forward for us.
Our final segment for this best of comes from my conversation with bridge teacher Amaresh Deshpande, who has a passion for teaching bridge to young people. He's even invented a bridge-like game called Hool. Here, Amaresh talks about some of the challenges of converting Hool players to bridge players. What is the trigger point that makes you decide to teach them bridge bidding instead of Hool bidding?
Yeah, we haven't figured that out. That is a big one. When do you think we are ready? I think the first step is to get people hooked, you know, because we don't want to lose them because we are now starting bidding and they feel, oh my God, this is not fun anymore, right? So I think it has to, we're looking for signs from that side and say, okay, now do you want to learn a different way of sharing information and then arriving at a contract? You know, Hool is pretty straightforward, we tell them, because you just share what you got, you know, 5 spades or 12 HCP or whatever. So I said there's another codified language which will take some time. And some say, yeah, interesting. So we already was telling them that Hool is like this and bridge is not like this, which is it's a codified language, which takes some time. And so we begun at about 20 and they're taking it. They're slowly adapting to it. We just don't want a dropout rate, you know, because the teachers I've spoken to around the world, they say that when they teach mini bridge and then they move on to bridge, that's when they have a dropout rate, you know, a high attrition rate. And that's not good for us, because then these kids tell other kids, hey, don't go there, you know, because that's, you know, that game is just too boring, or it's something, you know, doesn't make any sense. So I'm hoping that Hool bridges that and they get into some sort of information sharing and they like the idea of information sharing. And now we tell them, okay, would you like to share information in a different way? So it's a work in progress. So I don't have full answers for that yet.
So the kids that you've over to bridge bidding, has there been like a desire? Have any of them expressed like we want to go back to Hool?
Yes, and we immediately accepted that. I said, no problem, please come back. You know, yes. Because we don't want to lose them. We don't want to do that. Because they were really having a ball playing Hool. They were playing all kinds of things. But that's okay. Look, it takes a long time to learn bridge. I think people shouldn't be in a hurry.
Yeah.
You know, that people forget it took them 20 years to get. So what's the hurry? I mean, you're starting kids as young as, 10 and 12 and 13. That's okay. Let them take 3-4 years even. It's okay, you know. They don't have to start bidding, in the first year or something. That's okay if they take another year or two. It's okay.
It has been a pleasure to revisit each one of these conversations for the purpose of sharing in our best of. And at times, it has been painful because there have been a lot of learning that has gone on in this whole forum. If you are considering ever doing a podcast, I highly recommend it because it's a great opportunity to learn. One of my favorite lessons that I've learned through this whole process is to listen. And I want to thank our guests for their patience and for their willingness to show up and tell their stories. I want to apologize to the guests who I've talked over. And I'm so excited to share this with you all. I mean, I had a sponsor in mind. I reached out, I went hard for it. And unfortunately they didn't feel the same way about it. But I'm going to share this episode with a lot of friends who are not bridge players. I'm going to share it with my mom. This will be the first episode I share with my mom. So if you like it, please share it. Thank you to Michael Zhu for all the hard work that you do as our intern, including making the original selections for this show. Thank you to Brian Goodhart for doing the sound, for Nick Glennie Smith for our song. We're going to get that song. We're going to get a version of me singing that song soon. And thank you for listening.